Hello again, everybody. We're going to discuss nutrition today and metabolic states. And I hope people watched my last one. Nobody really replied. Um, Anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. So our body weight will remain the same if we intake and outtake the same amount of energy. I think most people know that, right? If you eat what you burn, you stay the same weight. Um, there are, however, some hereditary and even environmental factors that can make a variation between some people. Some people might eat that donut and make a lot more use out of the energy as opposed to other people. And I know I went on about this a little bit in the last lesson, but one of the cool things that I can give you as a doctor that you probably wouldn't get in a normal AP course is that I talked about those bacteria. Research has shown now that those bacteria can even influence the things that you digest better. So if you hang out with typically overweight people, your bacteria will start to look more like their bacteria, their gut biome. So a biome is, you think about all the animals and plants that exist in a desert versus all the animals and plants that exist in a rainforest. So we kind of want our gut to be like that rainforest, to be like this healthy, blossoming, all kinds of competition, different species going on, and not like the desert. There's a lot going on in the desert, but typically there's a few things that kind of reign as supreme. There's not as much diversity there. Um, so anyway, that's part of the environmental factors that might be taking place here. So if you hang out with typically skinny people, you'll absorb a typically skinny kind of profile gut biome. If you hang out with overweight people, you might tend to gain weight because you'll have a more or less diverse gut biome, and it might be one that makes you metabolize things like donuts and sugary things better than a skinny person who's expecting a lot of fiber and things. Their biome isn't adjusted to all that sugar. So, in short, the bigger people have a different kind of bacteria, the research shows, that maybe helps them to absorb more calories. And that could be beneficial. Whereas the thinner people have kind of forced their gut bacteria to turn into this like rainforesty kind of one that's going to deal with all these healthier foods like dietary fiber, different kinds of protein, that balanced fats, and their bodies have adapted to that. So when they eat a bunch of sugar, they just can't absorb as much calories out of it. All right, that's plenty about that. Appetite regulation, we'll speed through some of these. So your appetite is briefly satisfied by chewing, swallowing, and filling your stomach. This is why if you're thirsty and you're hungry and you're trying to lose weight, you can go drink a cup of water, and that swallowing and stomach filling can briefly satisfy you. Neurotransmitters stimulate desire for different foods, so your brain is really smart. There's a really cool research study. I really hope people are listening to this because I think that this is fun stuff. Um, that you could literally train your brain to want to eat pencils, right? If you needed something like, say, magnesium, and they took pencil and they infused it with magnesium and they fed it to you, your body, after a week or two, after a couple meals of that and getting the magnesium from it, you would actually crave pencils anytime you needed to eat magnesium. Isn't that insane? So your body, if you're craving the ice cream, if it's not a stress response, you might actually need something in ice cream. Same goes though if you're craving a cantaloupe or an apple or any kind of vegetable. And if you never eat those things, your body can't know that it has what it needs. So of course you're not going to like Brussels sprouts. Your body hasn't discovered what's in it yet. And the higher level order thinking can also override those thoughts as well. As a couple names that we don't need to know for neurotransmitters. Calories. 1 calorie is the amount of heat required to raise the temperature of 1 gram of water 1 degree Celsius. And the calories that we read about on labels are actually kilocalories. So if there's 100 calories in a bag of goldfish, one of those little 100-calorie packs, that's actually 100,000 real calories. And that's a lot, right? That would 1 gram of water, which is only like a small drop, a milliliter. You could raise that if you were able to completely burn all the energy in that little package of goldfish at 100,000 degrees Celsius, which seems insane. would never happen because of losses in the environment, etc. But that's what it means. So fats contain 9 kilocalories per gram, and then carbs and proteins contain about 4 kilocalories per gram. So this is why we get the typical, fats are bad, etc. kind of argument. Because they're worth more than double the calories for the same weight of food, the same mass. Sugar and alcohol are empty calories, not a lot of nutrients. So we were talking about the bacteria, and if you have like this not a very varied diet, you're not going to have a very varied gut biome. So we make it into ATP, currency of the cells. Nutrients, obviously we're going to take all those macronutrients, we're going to use them for growth and repair. There's things called micronutrients that we need small amounts of, but we talked way back in Unit 1. And there are certain recommended daily allowances for those. If you look on labels, you can see some of those RDAs, although there are RDAs for all kinds of vitamins and stuff too that you can see on maybe your multivitamin if you take one of those. So essential ones cannot be synthesized. Sometimes certain nutrients can be synthesized, but 8 of the amino acids are essential. The other 12 we can kind of make from other things. Certain minerals and vitamins we can't just make in our own body, we have to eat. This is why going vegetarian without really knowing what you're doing and doing a little research can actually be a little dangerous, because you could end up with like a B12 deficiency or some other types of deficiencies that could really hurt you in the long run. Fats. So average adult male is about 15% fat. Average female is 25% fat. Females need a little more fat because they are storing up energy, in hopes that their genetics would be passed on through a baby, and then they could feed that baby. Fat is the preferred energy storage because it has twice the energy per gram, right? 9 grams compared to 4 kilocalories per gram. Glucose and protein aren't really used to maintain it. It's just there once it's there. And remember, our body doesn't want to burn that at all, right? This glucose and protein, these usually get burnt off before we go and access our fat storage. So that's why once you are overweight and you have a lot of lipids in your body, it's difficult to burn because you got to get almost completely rid of the glucose before you can start accessing the lipids in a major way. Certain vitamins go in the fats, A, D, E, and K. These are the vitamins you can actually overdose on. There's been some rare instances of overdose on some of these. I don't believe there's ever been an E overdose. A is very safe. You can have tons of it. Same with D. And I think K is probably one of the more dangerous ones. It's easier to overdose on. But still very unlikely to hit any of these if you're just taking what a little bottle of multivitamin says. So if you take less than 20 grams a day of any of these, you're at risk of deficiency, which can have all kinds of different symptoms. So lipoproteins or cholesterol, we've seen those words before, right? Fat, protein, like kind of combos. We've got HDL, LDL, you've probably heard of these. HDL is known as the good cholesterol. It's the good cholesterol because generally it's taking cholesterol away from the body and depositing it into the digestive system to be expelled through, Low levels of LDL are good because LDL is what is delivering from the intestines to the cells. And this is where I usually go off on a tangent about sugar, and I would talk about diet a little bit. So you've got, let's say you go out for a meal. Let's pick on Chad. I wonder if he'll know I called him out of here. So maybe it's the one in our classroom, maybe it's not, I don't know. So Chad decides he really likes Snickers bars. Ooh, this is perfect. Chad loves candy. So he's really getting into some candy, and it's just all sugar, not a lot of variation there, right? A lot of sugar. And that sugar is going to get into his bloodstream pretty quickly, and it's going to spike his blood sugar, which is a major American problem. Now sugar, as we've talked about before, is a poison. So that poison, now in higher levels, is going to cause an insulin spike from your pancreas, right? Because you don't want the poison in your blood vessels, so you're going to tell the cells to take it in and use it for energy. And any extra is going to be used to turn into fat by the liver. So you've eaten that sugar, the sugar gets really high, and what it does is it actually bonds to things that it doesn't need to bond to, like the arterial walls, and it forms these things called advanced glycosylation end products. And there's a reason they chose that acronym to spell AGE, or age, because the more you have of them, generally the older you are. So if you continue to do this thing that Chad is doing, where he's eating sugar, spiking, eating sugar, spiking, eating sugar, spiking, then you keep causing all this damage. And what happens is cholesterol is actually going to be called in from your diet, and we can actually make it ourselves too. Cholesterol is going to get called in, and it's going to go to that area where the damage occurred, and it's going to sequester it. It's going to seal it off and try to fix it, right? But then what does Chad do? He goes and he eats another Snickers bar, probably 5 of them. So then glucose goes high again, and it makes an age, an advanced glycosylation end product with that cholesterol ball. So what's the body do? Well, it's got to fix this problem, so it sends more cholesterol in. So lo and behold, you get into your 40s or so, and you start doing some cholesterol testing and realize, oh my goodness, my cholesterol is high. And you're kind of pointing the smoking gun at this cholesterol guy who was really just there trying to fix the problem. And the point of this all is, the real problem was the sugar intake, right? All this glucose that was causing the damage. Would have been much better to eat like an apple. There's only one place in nature where you don't get fiber with the sugar, and that's in honey. Honey is kind of this weirdo where you get pure sugar. But anywhere else that you would have eaten sugar, it wouldn't have been like a brownie or a Snickers or anything like that. It would have come with dietary fiber, which would have slowed everything down in your stomach, and then your stomach would have just spurted out small amounts of sugar at a time, and it would have kind of been like this instead of a big old peak and dip. So you would have less insulin removed, less spike in blood sugar, less chance for damage from the poison, which is sugar. So recommendations to make better lipoprotein levels, i.e. high HDL and low LDL, would be to exercise regularly, avoid smoking, saturated fats, coffee, and stress. And coffee is, I don't know, there's a lot of studies on that go both ways. It's one of those things, kind of like eggs. I think it has to do with, if you eat a good diet, then eggs and coffee are probably all right for you. If you eat ramen noodles all day every day and Snickers bars, then coffee and eggs are probably going to be bad for you. I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. Also, for HDL, LDL, things like tree nuts, like almonds and walnuts and stuff, are usually recommended. They help raise your LDL and lower your LDL. Requirements for protein. So we need 44 to 60 grams of protein a day. And remember, we got 8 of them that we can't make ourselves. So this is where I'd usually talk about rice and beans a little bit. The reason rice alone is not what's known as a complete protein, because it doesn't have all 20 amino acids in it. Beans alone are not a complete protein. This is so beautiful. I'm just going to put beans. BNS. So rice and beans alone don't have it, but when you put them together to make rice and beans, all of a sudden now you've got a complete protein. So that's why it's such a popular food, because if your population's eating this, and they're cheap, right? Rice and beans are cheap. If you put these together, then you've got a complete protein and you can live, because you're getting all of these: isoleucine, leucine, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine. So we don't store any surplus protein. If we really needed these, our body would have to break down our muscles. All right, dietary sources. So meats, eggs, and dairy are complete proteins. So this, I guess this went on to talk about rice and beans. So plant sources, you have to combine them in the right proportions, like rice and beans. Oh, look at that. Oh, man, I just thought of that all on my own. Ketogenesis. So this is always a fun one. So ketogenesis. So this means that we're going to be making ketones. And genesis, as we talked about in class before, is the creation, or the start, the beginning. So the creation of ketones. So we make ketones when we burn fat. So this is a popular thing that you might hear about, people trying to get themselves into the keto diet. The Atkins diet is based on ketogenesis, where essentially you eat so few carbohydrates that your body has absolutely no choice but to burn fat for energy. And personally, I do intermittent fasting, and this is part of the premise of that as well. The basic premise of intermittent fasting is if you can go about 14 hours without eating, then at that point you've run out of sugar. So you will switch to burning fat. And if you can switch to burning fat, then you're getting rid of fat, which is that hard part to get rid of. And then you eat whatever you want as the premise. Most people do 16 hours of fasting and then 8 hours of eating. And you don't limit food groups or anything like that in intermittent fasting. Things like Atkins diet or keto diet, you might completely cut carbs out and not have any. And that can be, the research shows that you lose weight, but we don't know about the long-term effects of such a diet yet, that or intermittent fasting. One more thing about ketogenesis. If you know somebody with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, one of the signs is this sweet smelling breath, and ketones have this sweet smell to them. So because they can't, as a diabetic, they don't have the insulin to get the sugar in the cells, so their body has to start burning fats. And what happens is they make a lot of ketones, so they have this sweet smelling breath, and that's a sign of type 1 diabetes. So the absorptive phase. So this is the phase where you're eating, and 4 hours after you eat a meal, your body is using basically carbohydrates. Lots of blood glucose is available for cells to do ATP synthesis. Any extra fats are taken up by fat cells. Any extra carbs are converted in the liver to glycogen or fat. So if you eat that big old thing of Swedish fish, guess what? Sure, the Swedish fish were fat-free, but ding, 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 it's all carbs. If you eat a whole bunch of Swedish fish, they're going to turn right into fat. Honestly, that to me is like one of the biggest jokes of advertising. So fats, taken up by fat cells from chylomicrons in the blood, primarily energy for muscle cells, fat. So we've talked about how you have to burn your carbs off. Amino acids that you just ate, they have to go through the liver, and then cells pick them up as needed. So regulation, insulin, we've talked a little bit about that. There's these other hormones that you might just recognize: gastrin, secretin, cholecystokinin. Insulin is the most important one. You should know that insulin is in response to sugar, and it tells the sugar to go into the cells. So post-absorptive. So this is 4 hours after the fact of eating now. Blood glucose is going to be dropping. Stomach and small intestine are empty. Large intestine might still be working, but at that point, most of the food is done. So glucose is going to come from our reserves in our liver and synthesized into the things that we need. Fats are going to get converted to glycerol and things that are compatible with the acetyl-CoA system. Free fatty acids get oxidized and for energy. But yeah, most of the intermittent fasting talk says, you can't really get to this in a big way until you've burned through your carbs. So it does happen. You get a little bit. And the recommendation is low intensity, long duration exercise. So just walking on a treadmill for like 4 hours. So what would that do? That would burn all your carbohydrates off and you start burning fat. Right. Intermittent fasting says, maintain your activity. Don't go too crazy, but you have an extended fasting period where you burn all your carbs and then you're burning fat. Protein metabolism. We do use fuel for protein as fuel, but that's like a last resort, right? The body doesn't want to break down muscles and stuff. And this is where starvation fad diets are really, really terrible for you. So if you go beyond about 48 hours of fasting, I think they typically say three days of fasting, at that point, your body starts to eat into its own muscles. And you're going to end up coming back and you're going to be so hungry, you're going to end up overeating the number of calories. Study after study has proven that. Intermittent fasting is not fasting for that long to trigger that starvation system. We're not starving. Regulation of post-absorptive, so this is by glucagon, and we studied that in Unit 1. Glucagon makes the glucose, it's gone currently, so it's going to make the glucose come out after the glucose drops in the blood. Starvation. So this is what I kind of mentioned about 3 days survival mode. Um, if you're starving after 2 to 3 days, your body needs to provide glucose for your brain to survive, and it will do that at all costs, including wasting away and eating your muscles. So metabolic rate. A lot of people talk about how it can get stuck at a certain low level, and that can happen if you do all these like yo-yo diets. The average is about 2,000 calories a day, a little bit less for female. Varies greatly with your weight, how much you weigh. So I mean, this is if you've seen the shows about what life, like I don't know, the ones where they follow around very very obese people, and they eat like 6 pizzas and like all these orders of takeout. I don't know how they can afford it, but that's because it takes a lot of calories to maintain that amount of size. Anyway, there's so many cool tools we have nowadays. If you've got an Apple Watch or a Fitbit or anything, it might date this video, but they can track your daily calories, how much you eat, how much you walk, and they can really help you kind of target either below or above if you're trying to bulk up and gain some weight or lose some weight. So basal metabolic rate is just if I sit, I'm awake, like I'm sitting on this couch. If I were to just stare off and do nothing all day long on this couch, that'd be my basal metabolic rate. And they say that's around 2,000 calories per day. So all kinds of things can affect that, though. If you've got a fever, it gets higher, right? If you have a fever, it's actually pretty great weight loss, for a little while. Thyroid conditions are generally, there's a lot of people with thyroid conditions. Hypothyroid can affect your metabolism. Pregnancy, the little vampire is kind of sucking all the stuff out of you. Your body's happy to give it to it. But mostly it generates our body heat and keeps our pH and temperature perfect for our enzymes, right? We got to maintain that homeostasis. So our ability to regulate our temperature is very important. And that's where a lot of that basal metabolic rate goes, just keeping us warm. There's a natural cycle in body temperatures, and when we get to the reproductive system, I might talk about a little bit about in the female cycle, how during the fertile period your temperature is generally low, and then after you've ovulated it can elevate by 4 degrees, or 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if you are approaching this from a scientific standpoint and you've had a class to teach it to you, you can kind of target for when to achieve a pregnancy if that's what you're trying to achieve. None of you should be trying to because you're teenagers. Core body temperature is the temperature of the organs. Yep. Hold on, I think I got a package. I'll be right back. I'm back. So what can mess up our thermoregulation? Fever, which is a normal protective mechanism, elevates your basal metabolic rate, makes more heat, and then kills off the virus or the bacteria. Hyperthermia, so you're out in the desert or in Florida, to be honest here. Too much heat, not enough water. You can get heat cramps, heat exhaustion, or heat stroke. Heat stroke can be very dangerous. Delirium, convulsions, coma, death. Hypothermia, which is too much cold. So as your body temperature decreases, your basal metabolic rate decreases, and if your temperature goes below 75, you're generally considered fatal. So this latter half here will go a little bit faster. There's a whole section about fad diets, and there's all kinds of funny ones here. We talked a little bit about Atkins diet. There's things like the cabbage soup diet, where you literally eat nothing but cabbage soup. Grapefruit diet, nothing but grapefruit. South Beach diet's pretty popular. Any of the ones where you're eating one thing, I mean, what do you think the problem is with that? You're not going to get the essential nutrients you need from the chocolate diet. So if you're not getting enough nutrients, then that's obviously going to be a problem in the long run. So be fad-free, like Rome. Healthy habits aren't built in a day. So I think I'm going to go through some good advice here after we do some red flags. So really, everyone wants to lose a ton of weight as soon as they commit to it, right? But losing anything more than 2 pounds, and even really it should be like 1 pound per week, is really kind of excessive. Everyone, when they first get on the scale, they do their diet, and in the first week they lose like 5 pounds. And it's like, wow, I'm doing so great. But then if you notice, if you stop and you go back to your old ways, you gain that back almost instantly. Really what you lost in that first week is you lost some water weight. Water weighs a lot, like 8 pounds for a gallon of it, right? And you probably cleared out some like clutter in your lower intestine that you really didn't want there. That kind of cleared out. But it easily is gained back, right, after you start eating the way you ate before. So that brings me to an important point, is that these fad diets, the reason they don't work is you have to make a change that you're going to stick to for the rest of your life if you truly want to lose weight or gain weight for some people. So red flags, if they're promising permanent weight loss, that could be lying, who knows. Substantial weight loss for all users, everybody's different. There are diets that sound very sciencey, like they talk about whether you're a carb person or a lipid person, and they give you some advice. The key here is to just follow some general rules, which I think we're going to get to. Burn more than you take, right? That's what everyone says, but that's really hard to do nowadays, especially when we're all in quarantine right now. It's tough to get enough steps per day to elevate your basal metabolic rate. So healthy, effective diets don't require fasting. So there's the out for intermittent fasting. Yikes. And honestly, just be smart and do some research, and you can find things. Focuses on fiber. Mentioned fiber a lot so far, right? Encourages physical activity. Promotes long-term results rather than, lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. Oh. Doesn't cause chronic hunger. You shouldn't be hungry. Won't eliminate groups of foods or have rules about combining foods. Types of fad diets: low carb, high protein. So this is like the Atkins diet. Problem with these is almost all the fruits and vegetables and beans and whole grains, which are great for you, get left out. You're not allowed to eat those on these low carb diets. So that's pretty terrible. Some examples, we've kind of talked about this a little bit. Fad diets, some use the glycemic index, which is something that diabetics use to judge how quickly something will be turned into sugar in the body. So low glycemic index things are generally better. I think sugar is, pure glucose is 100. So it just gets straight into your bloodstream. There's nothing for the stomach to do, so it goes straight in. And then things like whole grain bread are a little bit lower than like white bread. So that's a cool chart to look at sometimes in terms of making healthy choices. And even things like this get, it's bad to just categorize things as good and bad. Because things like carrots, bananas, pineapples, and watermelons have a pretty high glycemic index. But should you not eat them? Well, in moderation. That's probably fine. Some low glycemic index. Oh, so here we go. Low glycemic index. So they'd encourage you to eat fruits and vegetables except potatoes, watermelon, sweet corn. High glycemic index, they'd encourage you to avoid cornflakes, baked potatoes, white rice, white bread, pasta. Those things are all very easy to process, and not a lot needs to be done by the digestive system to absorb all their calories and slap them right on your body as fat. Severe calorie restriction is a no good. You might lose weight, but all this research says you're going to end up gaining it right back. You didn't learn anything. You didn't make healthier choices. Obviously, the choices you've been making up to this point that led you to want to lose weight or gain weight haven't been working. So you need to make a permanent change. There's a bunch of examples. Crazy TV diets. There's like the Master Cleanse, which is like, some of these are like nothing but tea and shake, one kind of shake, green tea. And a lot of them, what's that quote? Like, in every rumor, there's a hint of truth. So yeah, like the green tea diet. Green tea is highly effective at helping you lose weight. Grapefruits, highly effective at making you lose weight. Should you make a diet where you're eating nothing but grapefruit and green tea? No, because you're not going to get all the essential nutrients that you need to have for your body to be successful. So here it is. Harmful side effects: nutrient deficiencies, fatigue, bone loss, constipation, sometimes cancer, high blood pressure, heart disease. Prescription for weight loss. So here we go, nearly finished. Recommendation number 1, exercise most days of the week. If you're sitting watching TV, you're not burning calories. Recommendation number 2, eat at home as often as you can. If you eat out, they tend to be high fat, high sodium, low fiber things that taste really delicious, but might not be that good for you. And at home, portion control is a little bit easier. You don't necessarily sit in front of an buffet. Eat more fruits and vegetables. Vegetables in particular, they have lots of fiber. They fight heart disease. They help with weight loss because they keep you full, and they lower your calorie intake. I mean, you're not going to find someone who's overweight that loves to dig into a big bowl of green beans, right? I mean, there's 30 calories in a big bowl of green beans? It's just not much. You're going to be full long before you eat too many calories. Write it down. So again, that comes back to fitness trackers could be really useful for that. There's so many apps nowadays where you can track your food intake and calories that you're eating per day. It's so easy to do if you really want to do it. Water, drink more water, right? It's going to distend the stomach. It's going to make it feel full. And my thing I always quote people is never drink your calories. I do drink calories occasionally, but it's a rare treat. But really, if you think about it, what does the body have to do to process a soda? Nothing. It literally just passes through the stomach and then gets absorbed in your bloodstream, causes that big spike, causes all the damage, cholesterol, then gets blamed. And then 20 years down the road, you're like, I don't understand how I have heart disease. Lots of studies that have proved, water is fantastic for you. I like the subreddit Hydro Homies. Breakfast, eat it every day. There was a quote where you're supposed to eat breakfast like a king and then dinner like a peasant, something like that, or lunch like a peasant and dinner like a pauper. That's generally good advice. Eating towards the end of the day. What do you do after you eat dinner? You probably sit around and then you go to sleep. So your body's not going to get the chance to burn those calories, and overnight you're just going to store it up as fat. So eat a low-fat, high-fiber breakfast. It's going to keep you full for long, and you're not going to want to eat more food after the fact. Persistence, daily. Keep trying every day to exercise, eat a high-fiber diet, so just don't give up, right? Ideally, the weight should come off slowly, not quickly. Lower calories without hunger, so cookies, chips, baked goods, crackers, tons of calories that get processed really easily. If you add some fiber to that, it takes the body a lot more work to get into. So fruit, brown rice, whole grain pasta. I made some of that over this quarantine, and I can understand why it costs more. It was a lot harder to work with. Limit intake of beverages that contain. So yeah, people in this country like to drink coffee when it's loaded with sugar and milk, which does definitely erase all the benefits that you could get from drinking black coffee. Soda, juice, punch, smoothies, obviously. When was the last time you sat down and ate 12 oranges in one sitting? Well, it was the time that you sat down and you drank a glass of orange juice. That's obviously not natural. Now, what the orange has is fiber that comes with it, and it's hard to peel it and do everything else and then eat it. So orange juice is pretty unnatural in a way, even though it's touted as a healthy drink. Start meals with a big salad. Again, it's just going to fill you up early. Vinegar, I think, has 0 calories. And this is the one I fall for the most. Avoid all-you-can-eat buffets. Oh, no. And the reason is you can keep your palate, your taste buds, so satiated because you can keep changing the flavor. Does that make sense? Right? If you get tired of pizza, well, you can go up there and you can get macaroni and cheese. You get tired of mac and cheese, you can go up there and you can get a sub. You get tired of a sub, you can go up there and get fried chicken. Right? You can keep eating all this different food and you end up overeating, and that's why all-you-can-eat buffets are not that fantastic. Eat only when you're actually hungry, which is also kind of a hard one for a lot of people. Nowadays, food is just so accessible that I think we're eating out of boredom a lot of times instead of when we're hungry. Watch out for baked goods, tons of calories in one little sitting.